afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Backyard Birds. I'm going to share some of the common birds that you're going to see in your backyard. The most important things about birding is identification. So that's what we're going to mainly focus on. I'm going to talk about, for some of these birds, I'm going to talk about what you can use in a bird feeder. If the people who have attended my bird talks in the past, I'm not a huge proponent of bird feeders next to houses because you can attract some unwanted pests. But that's, if you as a homeowner, if you want to do that, you certainly can. I would suggest you get a rodent-proof bird feeder, which they're out there and work very well. If you have a large piece of property, you can set that bird feeder way off, 100 feet plus, 100, 150 feet plus away from your house. So that's good. Then that'll work fine. Some of these birds will have bird feeders as well, such as the eastern bluebirds. I'm going to show some resources at the end for y'all to go to, such as Cornell and some of the EDIS publications. So we're just going to go ahead and get started because I have a lot of birds here. And this is the first one that I wanted to cover. And this is, our most popular bird. So this is our state bird of Florida. I think when I read last time, there was a petition going around to take this bird off our list as a Florida state bird. This is a state bird for multiple states in the United States. And you have some people wanting to change this bird to the Florida scrub jay as far as our state bird, which is our endemic species found nowhere else in the world. But the northern mockingbird, you can see the range there on the bottom right, covers most of the United States. And here in Florida, it's a year-round resident. People take mockingbirds for granted. They're a very intelligent species. Now, both the male and female build nests, and these nests contains, dead twigs, leaves. Sometimes you'll even find cigarette filters, foil, and some trash in there. Those pick whatever they want to build their nest. And their nests are usually built in any shrubs. And to have any good birding landscape, you have to have vegetation in your property. If you have large granddaddy oak trees and pines, that's awesome. That'll attract a certain number of species. But these large shrubs or medium-sized trees, like a ligustrum, for example, not very beneficial for fruit or anything to wildlife, but makes a great home and shelter for different wildlife. And so these shrubs will offer a great opportunity for these birds to hide in, because when birds go to feeders, they go to the feeder, then they hide. And they usually won't be in your yard, maybe in your neighbor's yard, but they'll hide in these large shrubs because other birds will eat your songbirds. So they want protection. And, whenever these birds have a nest in a tree, just keep in mind that all these nests with these songbirds, or any bird in Florida really, once they have eggs and babies in them, they are protected. And you really want to stay away from them. People really want to get close to them, take some pictures. I don't encourage that. If you have a long lens, great. Stay away and zoom in to capture it. But try to stay away from the babies if you can, because with some species, if humans get too close or interfere with that nesting process, they'll just abandon their babies and they'll die. So you don't want to do that. All of our birds are protected. All of our native birds are in Florida are protected, and even our vultures. But the mockingbirds, they're a permanent resident here. Their breeding season extends from February through August, but most nesting occurs through late April to May. They're infrequent hosts to what's called a cowbird. I don't know if y'all are familiar with this bird, but this is a kind of like a parasitic bird. What it does is it lays its egg in another bird's nest, it leaves, and it has that bird raise its babies. And what happens is these birds are typically larger and more aggressive than the native fledglings, and they'll kill them or push them out of the nest or whatever. And so some species are susceptible to that. some aren't. So this is the mockingbird is an infrequent host. To say it doesn't occur all the time. And you know, the mockingbirds are, you really can't tell. It's extremely hard to tell the male and female species together, as you would, you know, like a cardinal, which I'm going to show you later. And this is called sexual dimorphism. So these birds do not exhibit any sexual dimorphism. So the males and females kind of look the same. Now, the northern mockingbird looks very similar to a loggerhead shrike, which I'm going to show you all a little later, in size and color. This is a bird that adapts very well to any landscape. It doesn't visit the feeders actively, but it will visit them from time to time. So if you have a bird feeder, you know, if you have suet, which is very common, so you have a suet feeder and put suet in there, and that's good for a multitude of different birds. Sunflower seeds, mealworms, and so on. Mealworms are great for a lot of different birds, and you can get these at a pet store or some a place that sells bird seed and stuff like that. Fresh fruit sometimes they'll go to as well. And these bird feeders, you know, you have these platform bird feeders and other different types. But again, you know, if you have that bird feeder next to your house, I want to promote a rodent-proof bird feeder. So that way you won't have any little roof rats going to it. So this bird loves to sing, and it mimics other birds. It'll feed on insects and lizards and spiders, small snakes. In summer, they're really what we call insectivores. So they'll go after different insects such as grasshoppers, and they'll go after spiders. You know, even though spiders are insects, they'll go after spiders as well. And in winter, what they do is they change their diet to what's called a frugivore, so a fruit-loving species. And this is whenever you have native plants like beautyberry, for example. These birds love American beautyberry, and they'll feed on those berries. It's a known flasher. So you see this one on the bottom right here. So it tends to flash its wings every so often, and that's more of a territorial type thing. These birds are very aggressive. And I don't know if any of y'all ever had a mockingbird come down on you and try to attack you, but if you get near their nest, they're very aggressive. They'll defend it against humans, cats, and dogs. It really doesn't matter. And they really won't leave you alone. Native plants that you want to put in your yard to attract these different types of fruit-loving birds would be, again, the beautyberry and hollies and so on. Any fruit-loving, any fruit-bearing plant these animals would love. So the mockingbird populations, according to Cornell Lab of Ornithology, have actually declined for about 21% from 1966 to 2015, according to the North American Breeding Bird Survey. So it's important that we promote these birds, you know, give them the type of vegetation, the type of habitat for these birds to survive. And again, they're very, very vocal. A male may learn about 200 songs, individual songs throughout its life. So pretty amazing little birds. One of my other favorite backyard birds that you'll see is the common blue jay. And so this is again, people take blue jays for granted. They don't know too much about them. This is, again, a very, very intelligent bird. It's what we call a communicator and a problem solver. So it will scout. It's the scout of the forest, which means if there's a predator nearby, whether it be a Cooper's hawk or, you know, maybe like a small raccoon or whatever, this bird will start sounding off to warn against predators. It will also mimic a hawk, specifically a red-shouldered hawk, and it'll mimic it to the T, and it'll sound just like it. And what it does is that mimic will drive the birds from the feeders. Some people call this the bully of the bird feeders, and it really isn't. Other birds such as red-bellied woodpeckers and other songbirds will push this bird out. But mourning doves and mockingbirds and squirrels, they'll all chase this bird out. Males and females build the nest. these birds will mate for life. Now, other species will not, but this one will. This is a bird where if you approach its nest, it will abandon it, whether it's eggs or nestlings. So make sure you leave those alone. During the early days of hatching, the males provide food for the female and nestlings. And on occasion, you'll have what's called wandering nestlings. So the nestlings will drop on the ground and wander. And this is the case where people want to touch them and hold them and just leave them alone. Let nature take its course, okay? Now, when we talk about on these slides with these birds, it takes, for example, 1 to 2 broods, 4 to 5 eggs, and fledges out in about 17 to 21 days. That basically means the fledge means acquire the feathers necessary for flight or independent activity. Also to leave the nest after acquiring such feathers. Okay. And you can see it has this distinctive black little necklace. And these blue jays will also have a crest. Now the crest is down on this one right here. It's kind of down as well on this one. When it gets, and there's other birds that have these tall crests, such as cardinals. This crest, when they get agitated, when they're kind of upset, that crest will be up. Whenever you see the bird having this crest down and relaxed, that means it's kind of calm, it's kind of chilling out. The blue jay really doesn't have blue pigment in the feathers. So what happens is the sunlight refracts off the feathers that appear blue. So there's really no blue pigment whatsoever in these feathers. And it has what's called a gular pouch, and this will actually store food. So they can store about 2 to 3 acorns at a time in this pouch, and it's in the upper esophagus. And so they can use to carry this food. The blue jay populations have decreased as well for about 28% from 1966 to 2015. Okay, and you'll see it everywhere. You know, it's the mascot of Toronto Blue Jays, and it's a very common bird. They have another one, similar species on the West Coast called the stellar jay, which is absolutely gorgeous as well. Another common backyard bird, one of the most common woodpeckers that you'll see in your yard, I guarantee if you have a tree or a palm tree, you have these birds visiting your yard, is a red-bellied woodpecker. They're about almost a little over 9 inches long. And the males, so there is sexual dimorphism with this species, which means you can tell the males from the females. So if you notice this one right here, how it has this solid red cap from the beginning of the beak to about end of the nape right here on the back. This red crown is distinctive of a male. The female looks exactly the same as a male, but she has more of a gray crown on this top, and I'm going to show you in the next slide what that looks like. So they have about 1 brood, about 4 to 5 eggs, and they fledge about 12 to 14 days. So this is one of the most observed woodpeckers by sight and sound. It excavates in wood, snags looking for food. Both the male and female excavate a cavity of a tree. Now they do compete with other animals. Squirrels may want to take residence. Great-crested gnatcatcher might want to move in there, or European or non-native European starlings will also drive them out. So in any of the oak trees, now, you know, if you have a piece of property that has a dead snag, and if you want to leave it in your area, that's great. But also with your oak trees, you'll have these maybe like deadish limbs up top, or these little cavities on these old limbs. This is where these birds will take residence at. You can actually build, in Cornell, you can actually get the schematics on how to build a bird box for these as well. The hole is about 3 to 5 inches in diameter. And when feeding, this bird will go up and down the tree and round and round. Kind of hard to take pictures of because they're moving all the time, and usually by they see it, you'll see one, they'll go on the other side of the tree. But you can attract this bird to feeders. It's very easy to attract to feeders. I think the easiest way to attract them is using suet, like peanut butter suet. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. The male selects the site So whenever they find a good nesting habitat, the male selects a site and then calls or attracts the female by tapping on the wood. And so they may use the same cavity year after year on year after year after year. So very beautiful little creatures. And you can see how this one has a little nut or something right there. And you'll see them often. And this is what's fun about birding and wildlife photography is that you get to actually observe what these species do. And you can see this one on the right, has an acorn. What this one was doing, it was tapping on the palm tree. And it was hiding the acorns in the boots of this palm tree to come back later to eat them. And so this one right here, both the one on the left and one on the right, you notice that it has this red marking here on the nape, but on the crown here on the head, it's gray. And so that lets you know that this is the female of the species. Okay. Now this species will go after insects, spiders. It's pretty much a generalist. It'll actually eat other nestling birds. Okay. It's a very adaptable species. Its populations have increased. And what's unique with a lot of these woodpeckers is that the woodpecker these woodpeckers typically have a long tongue, and especially the red-bellied woodpecker. So it can stick its tongue about nearly 2 inches past the end of its beak. And the tip, and people always wonder, well, how do they get the insects out? Well, with their tongue. Well, the tip of the tongue is barbed, okay? And the bird's spit is sticky. So it makes it way easier to grab that prey and bring them back and eat them. Now, some people confuse these birds with red-headed woodpeckers, which is a different species. The red-headed woodpecker actually has a solid red head. So it's funny because they call us red-bellied, and really, the red belly is very, very faint on this species. So with these species, it's very encouraged in your community to plant hardwoods, such as any oak tree will work fine. And that way these birds have a home. Live oaks specifically, very, very important for wildlife in Florida, live oaks are. Okay, and as you can tell, what do you think on this one? Is it male or female? Okay, so this is really a beautiful, beautiful little female. So your other backyard birds, and this is something that you're not going to track through birdseed, obviously, but if you have the habitat, if you have large trees in your neighborhood, which I suggest, you will definitely attract one of our most common raptors. We have this is the red-shouldered hawk. Now we have red-tailed hawks, Cooper's hawks, sharp-shinned hawks, broadwings hawks, all, quite a few number of species. But the red-shouldered hawk is probably one of the most common ones that you'll find in your backyard. We have a resident species in my neighborhood. This is my resident hawk sitting on my fence and in my neighborhood. And they get about 15 to 19 inches tall with a 3-foot wingspan. The female, it's really hard to tell the female from the male unless you put them side by side. The female is about 20% larger. Okay? Aside from that, you really can't tell them apart. I don't have it in this. I don't think I have it in these slides, but the reason why they call it a red-shouldered hawk is because it has a red shoulder. And so whenever it flies, when it stands just right, you can see the red shoulder right there. It does have a red breast as well. The adults do, the juveniles do not. But that's why they call it a red shoulder. And so here's a male and female. You can see the one on the right is probably the female. She's slightly larger. Red-shouldered hawks breed from January to May. So right now you'll see the osprey, you'll see the red-shouldered hawks taking limbs. They'll actually fly with limbs in their talons and use to build their nests. And they'll use these nests year after year after year. And when these nests have babies in them, they are protected. Other birds, such as, for example, our bald eagles, their nests are protected year round, whether it has babies in it or not. So this is a nest in about a couple of houses down, my neighbor's house. And this is the 3rd season that they're using it. And they have babies every year that usually 2 survive. So they're perchers. So they'll sit and perch on a limb like that, and they'll dive down and capture whatever they're going to capture. It could be lizards, could be a small black racer, and on occasion they will go after squirrels. So there's actually two subspecies of red-shouldered hawks that breed in Florida. Okay, there's one in the Panhandle and the rest throughout the state. Males and females, so both the males and females build the nest, and they're active in feeding those little babies. You know you'll have an active nest because the bird poop will be on the ground. So the nestlings will shoot the feces over at 5 days old. So if you have a bird nest and you see a lot of bird poop on the ground, there's babies in there. They are enemies of the great horned owl. They will actually team up with crows to drive great horned owls out of the neighborhood, because great horned owls will decimate fledglings of any bird. They're very, very vicious predators. So here is some more pictures. Now you see the one on the left. See how it does not have that red breast? The one on the right is the adult. The one on the left is a juvenile. And the juvenile has these little black, brownish little markings on the chest, and compared to the adult that has this red breast right here. And notice it does not have a red tail. So when it's flying, you know it's not a red-tailed hawk. And the red-tailed hawk will not have this red breast or red on here either. And it's a little bit larger hawk as well. So the juveniles are very similar. They're easily confused with broadtails or red tails. And note the translucent wingtips, which are good diagnostic of this. It's a very vocal raptor, and probably one of the easiest ones to identify as far as the sound goes. The juveniles are typically, whenever they fledge out, they'll start hunting lizards and earthworms. Okay, and again, they'll team up with the American crow, and but you know, crows and hawks are enemies as well. The crows will go after the fledglings of the hawks, and vice versa. Okay, and they'll try to steal food from each other. And so here's just a couple more. Oh, I did put it in here. So here is a good picture, a great picture of why they call this a red-shouldered hawk. So this red on the shoulder right there is why they call it a red-shouldered hawk, not the red breast here. And this is the one with the resident species in my neighborhood. They will go after squirrels, and that's what that is. That's a squirrel. So they perch down. They'll actually attack the squirrel on the ground. Okay, they attack it, they kill it, and they'll fly off to a tree, perch, and start eating it. And it took about 15 minutes to eat this squirrel. But that's a circle of life. You know, squirrels are actually rodents. And so these are apex predators who have to cull that population. One of the most beautiful backyard birds that we have is the eastern bluebird, and they're found everywhere. These are year-round residents in Florida. You typically see them on power lines. So if you pay attention driving around, you'll always see bluebirds on power lines. These are, again, a species that's, the males differ from the females as far as color. Not too much, but there is a difference. The male has a reddish breast and white belly and solid blue head. The female has more of a grayish head, very, very faint color on the wings, and head is not as blue. So the male on this species is definitely more colorful than the female. They are primarily insectivores. So they'll perch. That's how come they like power lines. They like open fields. So they'll perch on these power lines or whatever, and they'll dive down and capture their prey. This is what they like to do. So, they'll feed on some fruits such as pokeweed, juniper berries. They've been known to eat snakes, lizards, and tree frogs. Here you have a male that has a little stick or whatever in its mouth. And what they do is, bluebirds really, they're cavity nesters, but they can't excavate their own cavity. They have to use other birds' cavities, such as red-bellied woodpeckers and so on. And so sometimes they're driven out by starlings, red-bellied woodpeckers. And actually, the eastern bluebird population years ago was going south. They were declining. The only reason why they started coming back up is because people started building the bird houses for them. If you want a great birdhouse, go to just put Eastern Bluebird Birdhouse, University of Florida, EDIS, EDIS, and you'll find a great publication by Holly Ober about how to build a birdhouse. It has to be built at a certain schematic, has to be at a specific height in a specific location. Location, location, location for birdhouses, okay? And it has to be predator proof. So Cornell Lab of Ornithology will have these recommendations as well. We're gonna start building bluebird houses in our extension office and giving them out as part of our workshops, because we want to see more bluebirds. We want to help them out. And again, that's why their population increased because of human activity. So it's interesting with this species too, you'll often see them in groups. The young of the first brood may help raise the second brood. So you may have little family groups within that first generation. Or, you know, when the weather is very cold, a group of bluebirds with a cat occasionally roost together in a nest cavity for warmth. And I've seen that in my own neighborhood. We have these large oak trees, and specifically in wintertime, you'll have probably about 8 to 10 bluebirds family living in the same cavity for protection from the weather in the winter. Okay. The female, yeah, really what's interesting, the male attracts the female by displaying this nesting material. However, that's all a ploy. So whenever he gets the female, he pretty much is, okay, well, now you finish building the nest. And so he dishes the nest and the female builds the rest of the nest. That's not fun, but that's what the bluebirds do. So here is, you can see the difference between the two, between the male and the female. So again, the one on the right's a male. See that solid blue cap on its head, and the female, more of a grayish, brownish, rusty color cap, and not as blue wings. Still a beautiful bird in her own right. So both of them are absolutely gorgeous. And bluebirds, they can hunt for quite a long way. So they can hone in on prey for about 60 feet away, attack at very high speed dives, and the bluebirds will actively defend their nest as well once they get started. So the pair stays for several seasons. And again, nesting boxes contribute to the success. They'll feed on suet, fruit, but mealworms are typically, you know, one of their favorites because they are insectivores. Other backyard birds that you'll see, now the ones that I've talked about are year-long residents, but we do have seasonal residents. Actually, from November to about March is the best time to go birding, or if you want to take photographs of birds. That's whenever we have a lot of species coming down to Florida. And this is one of them, is the palm warbler. So this is a winter resident, and it's about 5.5 inches long. It's not very big. And you'll see these birds all over the place right now in the backyard. These are one of the warblers that spend a lot of time on the ground. There's other warblers that do, but this one spends predominantly most of its time on the ground. And you'll see there's a little white above its eyebrow, some yellowish on the wings. So, you know, has a yellow throat, dark cap, and dark band across the eye. Florida, now we're in its non-breeding range, so it's not going to breed here in Florida. It's just pretty much escaping the weather from up north. And this is very similar to a Yellowrump Warbler, which I'll show you in a minute. This bird, if a cowbird does lay its eggs in their nest, these birds instinctively know that it's not their eggs, and they will destroy their eggs. Okay. What they'll also do is they'll actually use cowbird nest and put their own nest on top of it. They'll kill the eggs and put their own nest on top of it. Small little birds, little feisty little buggers. So this bird will spend a lot of time walking on the ground. Males are very territorial, and when it does, it sings to declare its territory. They do not mate for life. Now, although very common, the population has declined, okay, according to Cornell. And in fact, there was a TV, according to Cornell, there was a TV tower in Florida that caused the death of more than 1,800 palm warblers during a 25-year period. So when feeding, it bobs and wags its tail. hangs out in small shrubs in the edge of the forest. So this is why shrubs are, again, very critical in any environment. And again, one of the few warblers that will feed on the ground. And see a little close-up picture. Not a very big bird, but still a beautiful bird that you can attract. So, you know, you can attract these birds using native plants. Find native plants, go to the Native Plants Association near you and or native plant nursery. And this is a Sagittaria. This is a wetland. This is a plant that was used along a pond, which these birds love to use. So the worst thing you can do on a pond is just have grass or no vegetation around a pond. So I'm glad he was talking about stormwater or storm ponds later on, because vegetation is critical for a wildlife around ponds. And another winter resident is our eastern Phoebe, or some people say Phoebe. So 7 inches, and they're very beautiful. They have a black cap, yellowish chest here. Extremely common bird, very, very common. This is the most common of the flycatchers, seen in most every type of environment. The female builds the nest, and it's made out of animal hair, mud, or grass. A lot of these animals, you know, if you go in your yard and you see spiders in the spider nests, they'll use the silk of these spider nests for nests. It's pretty unique. And also Spanish moss. Spanish moss gets a bad rap, but Spanish moss is one of the most common materials for bird nesting in Florida. So the nests are frequently reused. In Florida, you know, this is the non-breeding range right now, so they're really not going to use nesting right here. So the Phoebes usually occur in Florida in late September or early October, and they typically leave around April-ish. So you're not going to see this bird in the summer, but this is one of the first birds that you'll see coming back. And it does what's hawking. So what I explained with the red-shouldered hawk, where it perches and dives down for its prey, it does the same thing. So it'll go after wasps, midges, flies, and dragonflies. These ones that I took a picture right here, we're going after small midges that were next to a lake. And if you want a bird watcher, if you're into photography, you really have to be a little patient. It's good to know if the animal's feeding on something, the animal will fly away, but be patient. Once the bird knows you're there, you're not doing anything, he's going to fly back. And this is how come I got so close to this bird. I was just sitting next to the tree where it's perched, where the midges are. And so it was going back and forth and pretty much ignored me later on. This was actually, the eastern Phoebe was actually the first banded bird in North America ever. So about in 1804, John James Audubon attached a silver thread to an eastern Phoebe's leg to track its return in successive years. And this is another one, hawking. This is our demonstration garden here in Bushnell. And you can see it's perched on this sign. And if you see what I mean by perching. So any of these perches that you can put in your garden's great. You can actually, if you want a great picture next to your bird feeder, just have a bird feeder, maybe have a small perch. You can actually make it your own and just make something where they can perch on. And that way you could stand and photograph that bird on that natural perch, because they will use it. Here's a gray catbird. These are another winter resident right now. This is a gray bird with a black cap and has a very distinctive call. In fact, the Chippewa and the Native Americans refer to this bird as the bird that cries with grief. It sounds just like a distressed cat. That's why they say a catbird. It's one of the easiest birds to identify. And this name, the scientific name of this bird, actually refers to its ability to, or its affinity to living in shrubs or small thickets, which is where this bird will be found. So if you have a yard full of ligustrum, viburnum, or privet, or whatever, this bird will be in your shrubs in the small thicket. This is the protection that it likes. Okay, and it'll come out and feed, and then go back and hide in the shrubs. Okay. And so you have another one. This is actually an invasive species. This is Brazilian pepper, which is not a good one. This is how it's spread by birds. But again, this is a bird that was feeding on it. Nice black cap right here. And this picture was taken in one of my favorite places to take pictures of birds, and that's Circle B Bar in Lake Wales in Polk County. And we have to show this backyard bird because this is a unique one. When I grew up, I lived on a farm, and on the farm we had barbed wire fences, and on the barbed wire fences, we'd often see grasshoppers or something impaled on the barbed wire fence. And this is from this bird. They actually call this bird Vlad the Impaler. Now it's small. It's smaller than a mockingbird, but this is, consider this more of a raptor than a songbird. Some people call them butcher's bird and so on. These are very voracious little birds. So the shrikes skewer prey on the fence. This is what they like to do. And what they do is they do this so they can tear the prey apart because their feet aren't strong to hold their prey. So as opposed to their feet holding the prey, they're going to stab it on something and then eat it with their beak. So they'll actively go after frogs, mice, you know, those lubber grasshoppers that you see in the landscape that are typically poisonous. They'll impale this grasshopper for a couple of days when all the toxins come out, and they'll eat this lubber grasshopper. They'll actually go after other birds, such as goldfinches, which is almost their size, okay, and impale these goldfinches. The numbers have dropped over the years. That's probably due to habitat destruction. They kind of like open fields, open areas, but they will go in your backyards, especially you have a pond or some shrubs and trees next to it. It has this, I'll show you a better picture, but it has this teeth called the tomial teeth. So like a falcon, the shrike tackles the vertebrate of the prey with precision, with precise attack to the nape. And it probably uses these tomial teeth to paralyze the animal with a jab to the spinal cord, okay? So like I said, pretty amazing little critter. Here's that tomial teeth right there, okay? And this was an area in the Villages, actually, in Sumter County. So yes, they are a backyard bird as long as you provide the right habitat. And one of the prettiest backyard birds, if you're lucky enough to attract them, are painted buntings. They're about, now these are a winter residents here. They're not a year-long resident. If you plant any plants with seeds, that's great. I'm going to tell you how to attract them using some bird seed. And if you're lucky, they're not everywhere, okay? If you're lucky, you'll attract some of these painted buntings because the populations have decreased over the years, about 4 to 6%. And this basically is because the cowbird, the common cowbird, the one I talked about earlier, this is a very common threat. So this bird will raise cowbird young, and the cowbird young will kill the little baby painted buntings. So that's a problem. And also, people like to capture these critters, especially in other countries such as South America and Caribbean countries, where it's captured and sold. In the United States, it's illegal to do that. So if you want to get a good view of painted buntings, the Circle B bar, if you're lucky, you can run into them. Or another one near y'all is probably a Lake Apaca Wildlife Drive, which is another beautiful place. But they use Spanish moss cobwebs for their nests, and just an unbelievable, beautiful bird. Now this is the female, so these are truly sexually dimorphic. So the female is beautiful. It's a beautiful greenish type bird. But here's the male right here. And there's really no, I don't think, any prettier bird. People see this bird and like, oh my gosh, is this really in Florida? This is a native species, yes. It's just not as common. So the males are very territorial. Look how small this bird is, by the way, and it's very colorful. You would think this bird would stand out, but once this bird goes into vegetation and starts feeding, it's actually kind of hard to see. But the males are very territorial. Don't let their size fool you. They have a territory about 3 acres, and fighting can be rough. So they can even fight to the death. So the males attract females using behavior like spreading its feathers, much like if you see a male turkey kind of strut, that's what it kind of does. These flocks will also intermingle with indigo buntings as well. But you can see this at Circle B, they don't have bird feeders. They just have the natural vegetation, natural grasses. Okay, the native grasses provide the seeds for this bird that offer the food and offer the protection. But there's many homeowners that attract these birds to their landscape, and indigo buntings can be used through through suet or any type of safflower seed or maybe black oil, sunflower seed, and so on. So any of the bird feed that you have, it's pretty much a generalist on that you can use to attract, hopefully attract these birds in your yard. I'm not going to guarantee anything because, like I said, they're not very common. So if you're lucky enough to do it, and they'll come, if you're lucky enough to track them and get some birds coming to your feeder, usually they'll come year after year. And here's some more pictures of just a male feeding on the seeds of these native grasses. And they do blend in very, very, very well. Indigo buntings are another winter resident that you can attract along with the painted buntings. Now, the males get confused with a male bluebird. This is actually a female right here, has a little blue right there. But I'm not going to talk too much about these, but the males also lack the blue pigment, such as like what's in the blue jay. So the feathers refract and reflect this blue light. So here's now I don't have a picture of my own of a full blown male indigo, which would be all blue. So this is a non-breeding male right here hanging out in the oak canopy. So again, it favors these brushy edges. Spring and fall, they migrate across Mexico, and the males defend their territory with a song, and it's usually the same song that can be used for 20 years in that area. Another common bird year-round is our blue-gray gnatcatcher, and these have a little wheezy type call. It's very easy to identify. They're only about 4 inches. They're very, very tiny. Along with you know, your cardinals and your tufted titmouse, probably one of the easiest birds to have in your area. So they're very tiny, about 4 inches long. They feed on, or they use these lichens and spider webs for nesting, and they can build numerous nests in a season. They're predated against woodpeckers and snakes and so on, and they'll feed after spiders, grasshoppers, and caterpillars. So easy bird to attract to your yard, not an easy bird to attract to a feeder. So you basically, again, have this wonderful vegetation, this beautiful Florida-friendly landscape that Ava is talking about, that wants to encourage you to put in your landscape. This is how you attract these birds, okay? And so they call this a little mockingbird because it looks just like a mockingbird, except a lot smaller. And it's usually found near water. So again, if you're fortunate enough to live near a pond or have a small pond, you will guarantee it, you will attract these. And this one right here is actually on an old sour orange, old citrus tree right there. And he was picking off these little insects in this spider web. And again, that's just another picture of it. Just a beautiful little bird. This is hanging out on a cypress tree next to a lake. And your backyard bird, people are saying, oh my gosh, what is so special about American crow? Another underrated bird as far as backyard birds go. The females and males look the same. So they're jet black. They may have a purple sheen in the sun. They feed on fruit, seeds, insects, carrion, basically everything. They're scientific at corvus, means raven. Now, it will nest, and it kind of competes with the great horned owl because the great horned owl will actually kill these birds and kill the fledglings. This is, again, one of the smartest birds out there. So it collects these shiny objects for the nests. It mimics other animals, such as other birds, and especially turkeys. I had one that I walked out of the entomology department in Gainesville, and I could have sworn I heard a turkey up in a tree. And I looked up, and there was a crow doing a perfect turkey call. You often see crows in groups, right? So they have extended families when unmated pairs to help raise the young. So the young American crows really do not breed until they're at least about 2 years old. And most do not breed until they're about 4. But they'll all help in this little community, in this little family group, okay? Crows in Florida are small with large feet, and the nest of the crow is usually built within a wooded area, but can sometimes be in an isolated tree. Sometimes it'll use an abandoned raptor nest. Both the males and females build it. And again, you'll typically see them in groups of 5 to 10. So we actually have 2 subspecies here in Florida. But I just wanted to bring out the crow because, again, they're amazing little creatures. You can see them chase other larger birds such as hawks and owls. Now, one-on-one, it will never, ever, ever take down a red-shouldered hawk. Its beak is just not going to do it. But a red-shouldered hawk can certainly take out a crow. The only thing is that, you know, you have one bird versus 5 to 10. So it's like a little mob mentality. So they're using numbers. Okay, they can live up to 20 years. And one example, and now is how smart these birds are. And this is, again, I definitely go to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, just a wonderful site. Their website, it's one word, all about birds. Okay, all about birds, and you'll find it. And they also have this cool app on your phone called a Merlin app, where you can take a picture of the bird. And this app is like 95% accurate as far as bird identification goes. And it's a free app. It's called Merlin. Okay. But going back to the intelligence of the bird, crows sometimes make and use tools. So examples include they had a captive crow used a cup to carry water over to a bowl of dry mash just to make it edible. And also, you had one that shaped a piece of wood and then it stuck it into a hole into a fence post to search for food. So it actually used tools. This is how smart this bird is. One of the easiest backyard birds is the cardinal. And this is the northern cardinal. The male right here is solid red with a black little mask here. Their scientific name actually means important. Cardinalis cardinalis. They're very territorial. At this time of year, you may see groups of cardinals together, because this is what they do. They flock in the wintertime. One of the easiest calls to identify is a state bird in 7 states. Okay, not this one, but another one's. And so just a easy bird to attract. Cardinals usually don't use their nest more than once. But, you know, they'll feed on seeds, insect, fruit, and the female is slightly different. Here you have sunflower seeds. Oh, excuse me, this is not sunflower seeds, but sunflower seeds can be used. This is a type of other bird seed that was being used to attract these cardinals. And you also, with this bird feeder, you had tufted titmice and so on. But you notice this is a pretty protected bird feeder. So this is one of these rodent-proof bird feeders that I was talking about, hung up a tree and so on. The only thing is that you can have a rodent-proof bird feeder, but where's the seed go when it falls down? It goes down to the ground. So you'll have to clean that up. Sanitation is everything, okay, if you want to prevent rodents. But here you have this cardinal, this male cardinal. See how his cap, he has this little cap right here that's down. And so that means it's pretty much feeding. It's not interrupted and so on. These birds, like I said, they feed intermittently. He's not going to sit and stay on that feeder for a long time. He's going to sit on it, grab a couple seeds, and fly into a large tree or shrub and be gone. And they're going to come back and forth, back and forth. So here's a female. So you can see that crest. Now she has this crest raised because I was on the ground. I was quite a bit of ways. But she still is like, okay, are you a threat? And she eventually lowered it and continued feeding. So again, cardinals are probably one of the easiest birds, one of the most common birds that we have in our landscape. We also have sandhill cranes. Now we have two subspecies of sandhill crane that occur in Florida. We have a migrating sandhill. We have a Florida sandhill. The Florida is protected in the state of Florida. So basically, if you see sandhills, a pair of sandhills in the summer, that's a Florida sandhill crane. Okay, the other ones just migrate down here in the thousands. So sandhill cranes, they do mate for life. They're very vocal. It is illegal to intentionally feed sandhill cranes. So even though this can be a backyard bird, do not feed this bird. Leave them alone. Because what happens is whenever you have a bird feeder and you start intentionally feeding these birds, now they're going to be a quote unquote pest. Because if you stop feeding them, these birds will go through your lanai, your screen, say, where's my food? And they'll also start tapping on your cars like, where's my food? Then they become very aggressive. So leave them alone. But these birds will actively feed in your backyard, okay? Just going after insects and grubs and whatever they can find. Here you have a juvenile right there. Typically 2 or 3 eggs are laid, 1 or 2 usually survive, okay? They have this beautiful mating dance that they have. Little babies are called colts, and the colts can leave the nest within 8 hours, and they're capable of swimming. Most of the nests are in these low, swampy type areas, so they'll have their nest in the water to protect against predation, okay? And so believe it or not, the adults and the colts can swim in water, okay? If you ever seen it, it's pretty cool. You can probably Google it. They'll feed on insects, frogs. They'll even feed on young birds, okay? Have seen that. The bonding between pairs begins about 2 years old, okay? And so the juvenile leaves after about 9 to 10 months, okay? And unfortunately, you do have road mortality, so be careful with these things on the road. Here they're preening, and this is all mud from their preening on the wings, but this is the kind of environment they like. This is what they like to lay their nest in, but they'll be feeding in your backyard. They can live about 20 years, and they have about a 7-foot wingspan, so they're pretty big. And they have this beautiful, beautiful little red mark right here. So the earliest sandhill crane fossil to be in Florida is about 2.5 million years ago, found in the Mac Asphalt shell pit in Florida. Okay, been here for a long time. And here's a video of a little colt, one of the survivors of this area. And hopefully that little one grew up. So just a couple more birds before we end here. A couple backyard birds, especially if you're living near a water area, all the boat-tailed grackles. They're not crows. We have a common grackle, but this one's different. It has a long tail. This one's the male. One on the bottom is a female. And you see how it has a piece of bread in it. That's what you don't want to do. Never feed birds bread. Good-hearted people do that. I get it, but it's not good for the bird, and it's not beneficial, okay? Now, most of the grackles around the state have dark eyes, but north of Gainesville, they vary, and they have yellow eyes, so it's kind of unique. You'll see boat-tailed grackles maybe in pairs all the way up to 15 and 20. Any place that you have any place that have water, you'll see grackles. Very noisy. This is a great picture of the little membrane that they have that covers their eye. A lot of birds have that protection against elements. Birds that swim have that protected against as well. So that's a male right there, and that's a beautiful female. And the grackles are larger than a red-winged blackbird, and even the females will push out a male red-winged blackbird. Okay, they can be quite aggressive. And again, this is the male. Sun hits them right, have this beautiful purplish color and blackish body. And you have the American robin. Just have, this is a winter resident, but you notice one thing right here. I'm a palm guy, and I love my sable palms. And sable palms or cabbage palms are one of the best wildlife magnets there is, especially for pollinators. And whenever it berries out with these drupes, you'll have a whole bunch of birds feeding on it. It's great for photography and bird watching. A sable palm is great for birds. Cedar waxwings, robins. You'll have woodpeckers on it and so on. So right now the robins are out, and they'll start going back up north in a couple of months. And another winter resident is our Yellowrump warblers. Looks very similar to a palm warbler, but has this characteristic yellow rump. This will feed on the ground as well. But if you want to attract these birds, sunflower seed is great, raisins, peanut butter, and so on. But for our native plant enthusiasts, a wax myrtle, right? Hopefully you know what a wax myrtle is. This is a great small shrub, small tree-ish, if you will, multi-branch tree. Great for planting next to water, great for planting any yard. It's used for protection, but also has these myrtle berries that this is one of the few birds that actually can digest the waxes found in wax myrtles and bayberries. And so this is what this bird is eating. And so again, if you like bird watching or photographer, go where the food is. And so this is a wax myrtle, okay? And this is a yellowrump feeding on the myrtle berries, okay? And sometimes this bird's called myrtle warbler or Audubon's warbler. It all depends on what kind of name you want to give it. But again, a beautiful bird. But notice it's different from the palm warbler. It has these two little white patches on the side and a characteristic yellow rump. Another easy bird to attract a year-round resident is the Carolina chickadee. And so if you want to attract Carolina chickadee, sunflower seeds and suet. So you're getting the gist of common birdseed, right? Safflower seeds, sunflower seeds, suet, mealworms, okay? You can't go wrong with putting those out. These are cavity nesters. They don't have a bird nest. They're cavity nesters, okay? And we have a couple in our demonstration garden, but this is actually in our Hernando office up there, Carolina chickadee. Easy birds to identify. I think one of the last ones that I'm going to cover is, because we're out of time at 12, is the pileated or pileated woodpecker. One of the largest woodpeckers we have in the state. Has a barbed tongue, very characteristic call. He likes to use dead snags for nesting. Just a beautiful, beautiful bird. You can tell the males and females. So the males have a red stripe on its chin. A red stripe on its chin. This is a female. They all have that red little cap there. And if you see on this one, this is a couple babies. This is an old snag, old tree that these bird peckers need to survive in. And you'll see this little red patch on the cheek. This is a male. It's a baby male. And again, this is a female, but look at the long tongue that's barbed and used for this tree. If you believe it or not, you can attract pileated woodpeckers. Again, suet is the best thing for woodpeckers. They love it, okay? And or black oil sunflower seeds and mealworms as well, okay? So I think that's all. Well, I'll cover hummingbird. Let's cover hummingbirds. Last one. So this is now we have rufous hummingbirds, but ruby-throated hummingbird is one of our most common species. They're about 2.5, 3.5 inches long. The males have a reddish, you just have to catch it right in the light, but I think this is a female right here. They will go after feeders. I don't promote hummingbird feeders at all because you have to clean them out quite frequently. If not, you'll hurt them. If you want to attract hummingbird feeders, you have to track the right plants. This is when you go to your expert horticulturalist like Ava, who will give you recommendations on planting these red tubular flowers such as firebush, coral honeysuckle, Wendy's wish salvia. Any of these red tubular or any tubular flowers, you'll attract these hummingbirds. Okay, this is one that was attracted to our salvia in our demonstration garden. They feed, they go away, they perch. This one's perching on a pine tree, okay? Or this one's perching on a crepe myrtle, okay? And they'll go away. Here's one actively feeding on a firebush. So look at the little tiny feet. And again, it'll feed there for about a couple seconds and then it's gone. A couple of resources for y'all. This is the Feeder Watch. Just go under Project Feeder Watch. This is the site you'll go to. You can basically click on the bird and it's going to tell you what kind of house it likes and what kind of bird feed it likes. Okay, so pretty neat little website by Cornell. So Cornell Lab Project Feeder Watch. If you want a great book to use, there's all sorts of books out there. I'm going to be creating a guide here in maybe another year or two for Central Florida, but this Birds of Florida Field Guide by Stan Tekela is excellent. That's one of my go-to books. And he has a newer version. They also have a wildflower book just like this. That's written by him and also Dr. Jarrett Daniels of UF. Highly recommend those books. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Sorry I couldn't get finished with the rest of the birds. I think Ava's going to have a recording of this, but if you would like a PDF copy of this presentation, all these pictures are mine. So I don't mind, you know, if you want to have a PDF copy of this presentation, please email me and I'll be happy to send it to you. If you don't get a response in a couple of days, please email me again, because I get several hundred emails a day. So I just want to make sure that y'all get the PDF if you request it. Okay. So with that, do we have any questions? Do you have any questions? Just Ava, I think we'll take care of that.
We don't have any questions in the chat. If anyone would like to actually just make the question, you can unmute and do it, or you can type the question in the chat box. Actually, in the chat, I put all the links that you mentioned and your email also there. So anyone that would like to just click the different links before we finish and leave that tab open in their computer, they can have it. And Jim, if you want, you can email us the PDF and we will send it to the ones that were here today, instead of all of them emailing you and you have to send that to 20-something people. But if you send us the PDF, we can send it later this week. So I have a question here.
Okay.
Let me see, you know. One is just great presentations and beautiful pictures. And the other one, we have some oak trees we have to trim down to leave snags. Should we leave them taller than the fence? Now the chat is moving.
Yeah, I see that. Let me hold on. Let me read these real quick. So first of all, Yolanda, hey, Yolanda, I know you. Let's see. I figured I was kind of suspecting you'd be on. Yeah, I was kind of suspecting you'd be on because you're from Osceola. That's one of our Osceola.
How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing good. Good to speak you in person. Awesome.
One day.
All right. Excuse me. So now we said we have some oak trees we'd like to trim down to leave snags. We have some oak trees to trim down to leave snags. Should we leave them taller than the fence they are next to so birds can fly to it easily, or would they find it lower than the fence line? It's preferable if it's taller, if it's a tall tree, because that will help against predators. They're probably going to be more apt to use it that way than a small stag like the size of a fence. Okay. Sinia, thank you. Okay. Is there a way to tell the difference between male and female sandhill cranes? Very, very hard. The male is slightly larger. You basically have to put them side by side, but they're almost identical. And they do take turns on their nests as well. And the colts, if you go to a place, like I said, a little wetland area, you'll see this huge nest in the middle of it. And actually the mamas, they're actually raising the colts right now. So most of the colts are hatching. So you'll start seeing those in a couple of weeks. So keep a lookout for them. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Jennifer. Yep, absolutely. And I'll send that, Wendy, I'll send that PDF to Ava and she'll send that out to y'all.
So with that, thank you very much for spending some time. I don't know if this is lunch for some, pre-lunch for others, coffee break for others, but thank you. Thank you, Jim, for a great presentation. And I hope I see you guys on Saturday here in Osceola Heritage Park, or during the week that we have many other presentations. This is the first of 10. So we have 9 more presentations this week. Please share the information with your friends and family. And eventually also we have many other classes, not only here in Osceola, but Orange County, Seminole, every extension office has their own series of programs. So I thank you all for being here with us and I hope I see you again. Thank you.